The Seattle Mariners offseason is over. Let's talk about it. So what do I mean when I say the Seattle Mariners offseason is over when there still is time for them to go out and make a trade or sign another free agent? Well, Adam Judes of the Seattle Times posted this article the other day, and it says, with the return of Jorge Polanco, the Mariners roster is effectively set going into spring training. So yes, you guys were all right. Another offseason of disappointment and another offseason where they have not gone out and got this team enough offense to make them a legit contender every single year. That being said, Adam Jude also did put into the article that Luis Castillo is very unlikely to be traded at this point in the offseason, even though he was more likely to be traded a little bit earlier this offseason, which is great news for Seattle Mariners fans because we get to enjoy another year of these 5 starting pitchers go at it every single day and absolutely dominate the league from a pitching perspective. But now, yet again, the real question lies in the fact is this offense good enough to go behind that pitching and really lead this team to a championship or even deep into the playoffs? Or for that matter, even make the playoffs at this point? So there are a few things that Adam Jude discussed in this article that I'm going to go over with you guys, as well as a 2025 projected lineup. So essentially what our 1 through 9 would look like potentially on opening day, and whether or not I think it's a lineup that can compete for a World Series, or it's just going to, maybe just make the playoffs or just be short of the playoffs. So as you guys know, with the Jorge Polanco signing, they do plan on having him at third base, but between his signing as well as the Donovan Solano signing, that is a little over $11 million of the payroll. So basically all the Mariners have left is about $3 to $4 million left to spend on free agents, or obviously taking out a contract through a trade. So yes, they are very firm in their budget and clearly do not want to go over. Now, the other side of the conversation is also from the bullpen side, is they obviously got a lot of arms like they always do, hoping someone pans out or they can turn someone into something, kind of like what they did with Colin Snyder last year. And obviously they are banking on the fact that Matt Brash is also coming back, and also the fact that you can hopefully get Gregory Santos to be healthy for a full season, because otherwise your bullpen is still pretty solid. I mean, Munoz, Brash, and Santos to begin with is absolutely gross coming out of the bullpen, but I mean, adding some other pieces that hopefully can build up into something throughout the year would also just help that. But obviously there hasn't been no big major league bullpen signing like a Paul Sewald or something like that. But Adam Jude also does give us a little bit of insight on kind of what Donovan Solano's role would be. He does say in the article that Solano is expected to split time with Rayleigh at first base and be part of the rotation as the DH, which nothing really there comes as a surprise, as we know that Jorge Polanco will probably get most of the reps over at third base with Dylan Moore mixing in here and there, but Donovan Solano will be your first base / DH type. Adam Jude also discussed the Mitches and how they play into all of this, and he said that most of the roles will most likely be at the DH spot, which is not much of a surprise to anyone, but also the fact that their roles on this team are very unclear, because obviously who knows what they're going to do, whether they mix in the outfield or, the other Mitch mixes in at catcher behind Cal, which I'm assuming they will end up doing because we do not really obviously have a backup catcher, which I think Mitch Garver will be the backup catcher. And then Jude obviously also mentions the versatility of Dylan Moore, who is a Gold Glove now, but obviously from a defensive perspective, he is a solid player. Offensively, he does scare me a little bit just due to his inconsistency throughout his career offensively, but as we know, his defense is fine and he can mix in anywhere where he is needed. So now let's discuss what the 2025 opening day lineup could look like, and I'll give you my thoughts after we go over it, but I don't think you guys are going to be much surprised by what this lineup looks like, but I'm going to go through it, kind of just my concerns as well as some positive things that are coming from it. So leading off and playing right field, you have Victor Robles hitting second, you have Julio playing center, Cal catching, hitting third, Randy Rosarena hitting cleanup at left field, Luke Rayleigh playing first base, hitting fifth, Jorge Polanco playing third base, hitting sixth, Donovan Solano at DH, hitting seventh, JP Crawford playing shortstop and hitting eighth, and then Dylan Moore at second base, hitting last. So on paper, if you look at this lineup, I would say the 1 through 7, even 1 through 8, if JP Crawford can bounce back, is pretty solid. I mean, it's not anything crazy. It's not any massive names or absolute superstars in the lineup besides obviously Julio, and you could argue that Cal is also a superstar, even though a lot of people think he isn't. But this lineup is pretty good. I'm not going to sit here and say this lineup is terrible. They're going to win 50 games, especially with the pitching staff. You put this lineup and what the kind of production you got at the back half of last year together, this lineup has some potential. Now, let's kind of go down the list in terms of what concerns there may be, as well as how many guys, yet again, they are relying on to quote-unquote bounce back and have better years than they have been having. So starting off with Victor Robles, as we know, Victor Robles had an insane year last year. The number one question with Victor Robles is, can he do it again? Obviously, this is one of the best years he's had in his in his entire career. And when he came to Seattle, he basically revived his career and kind of have lived up to the hype that he had underneath him. So, the big question there is, can he bounce back in 2025 and do what he did in 2024? Second, you have Julio Rodriguez. And for all of you Julio haters out there, you're not going to hear it here. Julio is an absolute stud. Now, that being said, we definitely do need him to be more consistent. It would be nice to have him even win an MVP, but let alone at least be in the top 5, top 8 for MVP voting, because we need him to produce at an extremely high level in 2025. Now, moving on to Cal Raleigh. In my personal opinion, Cal Raleigh, you know what you're going to get from Cal Raleigh. He's going to hit 220 and put out 30 plus bombs, 90 plus RBIs, which I feel very confident in. He's going to play a great catching defense as well. So I'm not worried about Cal. He's honestly the least person I'm worried about in this entire lineup. So I think he's just obviously going to do Cal things. Now, in your cleanup spot, you have Randy Arozarena, which you did not have at the beginning of last year. You only had him from the trade deadline on. So now the biggest concern with Randy Arozarena is he had a down year last year. So is there a way that he can bounce back from that? Can he come back and kind of be the Randy Arozarena that everyone knows he can be? He did pretty well when he was with the Mariners last year, but you really need him to go up, start hitting 260 again, start putting out 25 home runs. So will he bounce back? Yet again, that is another question on can he put together a legit season again, especially playing in Seattle. Moving on to Luke Raley. Now, Luke Raley is also somebody that I feel very comfortable with in this Seattle Mariners lineup. I'm not overly concerned with his production. I think he will be consistent. He's a workhorse. He knows exactly what he wants to do, and he just mashes fastballs. Now, the one thing that he obviously needs to improve on this year is hitting the breaking balls and hitting off-speed things, but if he continues to do what he did, especially at the plate last year, we will be just fine at first base. Now you move on to Jorge Polanco. And now, as you guys know, I was a big fan of bringing Jorge Polanco back in the first place. Not saying that he had a crazy year last year by any means, but I do think he still has the potential in him, and I do really think that injury held him back. So again, he is arguably another player that is very up in the air as can he bounce back? Can he become the Jorge Polanco that the Mariners wanted to get in the first place? And can he also play very good defense at third base, or at least be a little bit above average? And yet again, another question in that is, can he be healthy? Is that knee going to be able to put together an entire MLB season, or is he only going to be able to play 80 games or 100 games, whatever the case is? So there are a lot of question marks around Jorge Polanco, but I do think he will be on top of his game, especially in what is basically a prove-it year for him. He got an opportunity to come back to Seattle to kind of come back and show what we got him for in the first place. Now moving on to your 7 hole, you have Donovan Solano. So Donovan Solano, in my opinion, he is also going to be a very consistent bat. He is not going to put out a lot of home runs. He's not going to drive in a lot of runs, but he's going to put up a very high batting average, which is something that the Seattle Mariners desperately need. So in my opinion, you have somebody like Victor Robles and Donovan Solano who put up very high batting average is something that would be huge for the Seattle Mariners going forward, and having those guys that they can rely on to possibly even hit 300 for the entire season. So with Donovan Solano, I don't really have that many worries, especially if he's going to be mainly DH. I mean, his defense is not great, as we know, but if he mixes in at first base, he'll be fine for, he might only play 30 games there throughout the year. But I am just fine with Donovan Solano. I think he will be a very good addition to this lineup. Now, also kind of going hand in hand in that is the Mitches. I know you guys, I did post a video on this earlier this offseason, and I do believe Mitch Garver will bounce back for a number of reasons. You guys can definitely go check that video out if you want to. But I do believe Mitch Garver will bounce back, and like I said, not bounce back in terms of hitting 275 with 35 home runs, nothing crazy like that. But I do think he can get back to at least driving or, having 20 plus home runs in a season, as well as hitting around 230. Now, is he obviously overpaid to do that? Yes, but I do think he does have a lot of potential in terms of bouncing back. And Mitch Haniger, to be honest, is very much a toss-up in my mind. I don't even really know how many ABs he's going to get. I mean, I believe he is projected to get over 400 ABs by Fangraphs, so I don't know how that is going to happen or whatever the case is, especially if Luke Raley is also mixing into the outfield, and we already have a massive logjam at DH. But, I mean, he's very much a toss-up. He's very much overpaid to be a toss-up, but, we'll see what happens there. Now, J.P. Crawford, he is in your 8 spot playing a solid shortstop. As we know, there is nothing to worry about defensively from J.P. Crawford. And as we do know, last year was kind of a rough year for J.P. And like I said in the previous video, I do believe that the injuries kind of held him back, and he was really never being able to get consistent throughout the year. He would play 30 games, get a little hurt, miss a little bit of time, and then he obviously had that big injury where he was out for about a month and a half, 2 months. So I think that definitely played a big part in how he struggled last year. So I do believe he will bounce back. I don't know if he'll bounce back to his 2023 form, but I do think he will bounce back and, be a very productive piece to this lineup. And number 9, you have Dylan Moore. You know what you're going to get from Dylan Moore. You're going to get absolutely insane defense, as well as a very average to maybe even below average bat. So really nothing crazy there. You'll probably see a little bit more of Ryan Bliss this year as well, which I am a little bit excited because I do think he also has a lot of potential. He has a lot of pop for a guy who is 5'10". I'm not making fun of 5'10 guys. I'm 5'9", 5'10. But That being said, I do believe that, this lineup has potential. Like I said, I think there's a lot of question marks, like there always is, because they don't ever go out and get guys that, we know what they're going to produce every single year. So again, there's guys in this lineup that are very much a toss-up. There's guys in this lineup that, might be gone by the time the trade deadline comes and the Mariners are either competing. They need to go out and actually get another legit bat, kind of what they did with Justin Turner or Randy Arozarena at the deadline last year. But who knows? We will see kind of what happens. But like I said, I think this team has a decent amount of potential. And you also kind of get that Edgar philosophy for an entire season, because as we know, when Edgar came in last year, this team was absolutely dominant from an offensive perspective. They were 4th in the league in FWAR when Edgar came in last year. So if they can, even like I said in a previous video, if they can just be top 10, top 15 in offense for the entire season, never really drop below that, this team will make the playoffs without a doubt. But otherwise, please let me know what you guys think of this potential lineup. As we know, we don't think the Mariners are going to make any other moves throughout this offseason. So in my opinion, the offseason is over and now it's time to get into spring training. But otherwise, I hope you guys did enjoy the video and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.